CEO laughed at the single dad's forklift. He holds the patent on every robot in her warehouse. The morning Vera Lindholm brought the investors through the flagship fulfillment center, the floor was running the way she liked it to run. 250,000 square feet of polished concrete and quiet, hundreds of squat orange robots gliding under the racks in patterns that looked, from the mezzanine, like a single living thing breathing. And down in aisle 9, the one human aisle they kept for the oversized freight, Adam Beckett was moving pallets on an old propane forklift that coughed when it idled. He was 42, lean and broad through the shoulders, with short dark brown hair going gray at the temples, and a few days of stubble he never quite stayed ahead of. There was a faded scar near his left eyebrow. He wore a yellow high-vis vest over a gray workshirt, steel-toed boots, and on his left hand, under a work glove, a plain wedding band he had not taken off in the 3 years since Rose died. He drove the forklift the way he did everything now, without hurry, without complaint, and he never once looked up at the robots that moved around the edges of his aisle like a tide, though he knew the sound of every one of them, and could have told you, with his eyes closed, which of the 400 was running a bearing half a turn out of true. Vera was 39 and had built Lindholm Logistics out of her father's failing trucking company into something the analysts used the word empire about, and the automated fulfillment network was the proof. She walked the investors along the mezzanine rail, talking about throughput and uptime and the labor line going to nearly zero, and then she gestured down at aisle 9, at the man on the coughing forklift, and she smiled the smile she used when she wanted a room to laugh with her. "We keep one around for nostalgia," she said. "Costs me more in propane than he moves in a week, but the board likes a human in the brochure." A few of the investors chuckled the soft chuckle that follows money. "Don't worry," she added. "By next quarter, even he's automated." Down in the aisle, Adam set the pallet down soft, the way you set a thing down when you respect it, and he looked up at the mezzanine for 1 second longer than a man on a forklift was supposed to. Not angry, only steady, the way a man looks at whether he has already decided to walk through. Then he went back to the freight, because the freight needed moving, and in the cab of the forklift, tucked into the wire clip where another man would keep his phone, was a folded sheet of construction paper with a child's drawing on it, a house and a sun and 2 stick figures holding hands, and no one up on the rail could see it, and he did not show them. What happened next, Vera could not have scripted and could not afterward explain away. One of the robots in the main field stuttered. Just one, far out under the racks, a unit that hitched in its turn and then corrected and rolled on, and not a soul on the mezzanine noticed, because 400 robots moving is a kind of music, and one wrong note vanishes into it. But the man on the forklift in aisle 9 went still. He set the brake. He climbed down. He walked out to the edge of his aisle, where he was not supposed to go, and he watched the field for maybe 40 seconds, his head tilted the way a man tilts his head at a sound only he can hear. And then he walked to the nearest floor terminal and keyed something in, and a single robot 200 feet away pulled itself out of the swarm and parked itself against the wall, dark, before it could do whatever it had been about to do. The floor supervisor came running, a heavy-set older man named Gus with 30 years in the building, and Adam said something to him low, and Gus looked at the parked robot, and then he looked at Adam for a long moment with an expression the investors on the mezzanine could not read. And then Gus took his cap off, which was a strange thing to do, and put it back on. Vera saw all of it from the rail. She did not understand it, but she filed it, the way she filed everything, in the place where she kept the things that did not add up. Adam drove home at 3 to the small rented house on the south edge of town where the streets gave way to scrub and chain link. Sadie was on the porch with a library book across her knees and her sneakers not quite reaching the boards. She was 8, dark-haired, with her mother's habit of going very still when she was thinking. "Mr. Petrakis's gate is squeaking again," she reported. "I oiled it. He gave me a peach." "Did you charge him?" "You can't charge people for a squeak," Sadie said, with the patience of a child correcting an adult who should know better, and he smiled, because it was the kind of thing Rose would have said. He made dinner, pasta, and the last of the good zucchini, and they ate at the table with the television off the way they had eaten since Rose got sick. Afterward, Sadie drew at the kitchen table while he washed the 2 bowls, and when she went up, she left the new drawing on the counter for him to find. A man, a girl, and in the corner, smaller, a woman with long hair, drawn off to one side, watching. He set it in the drawer with the others and turned off the light. What he did not do that night, and had not done in 3 years, was open the gray plastic tote on the top shelf of the hall closet behind the towels where the rest of his life was. A framed patent, a photograph of Rose at a whiteboard covered in her own handwriting, laughing at something off camera. A scuffed laptop that still held the first lines of code she had ever written for the machines that now moved a quarter of the country's parcels. He knew exactly what was in the tote. He had not been able to put it in a drawer he opened, and he had not been able to throw it away, so it lived on the top shelf in the dark, the way some griefs do, where you know exactly where it is and you do not reach for it. Vera could not have said why the forklift man stayed in her head. Maybe it was the way he had looked up at her, that extra second, level and unbothered. Maybe it was the robot that had parked itself against the wall. When her engineering lead pulled the unit's logs the next morning, the diagnostics showed a drive motor fault that had been 90 seconds from seizing in the middle of a live aisle, the kind of failure that, in a field of 400, could cascade into a 6-figure shutdown before anyone in the control room finished their coffee. The man on the forklift had heard it across 200 feet of moving machinery, identified the unit out of 400, and pulled it offline before the system's own sensors had so much as raised a flag. The engineering lead, a man with 2 graduate degrees and 9 years on the network, played the audio back at quarter speed in the quiet of his office, and still could not hear the thing the forklift driver had heard at full speed across a roaring floor. How did he know which one? Vera asked. The engineering lead did not have an answer. So Vera went looking, quietly, the way she had learned to do things in 15 years of not trusting the men who smiled at her. There was a name on the warehouse roster, A. Beckett, 3 years, forklift certified, no incidents. She typed it into the patent database almost as a joke. It was not a joke. The foundational patents on the autonomous floor units, the navigation system, the swarm coordination logic, the pick-and-place arm her entire network was built on, listed their inventor as Adam R. Beckett. Filed 9 years ago, under a company that Lindholm Logistics had acquired in its hungry early days, and folded in so quietly that no one left in the building remembered it had ever been its own thing. The patents were licensed to Lindholm, not assigned, and the license, the original one, required the inventor's countersignature to transfer. The man she had called Nostalgia, the one she had joked she would automate by next quarter, had invented every robot on her floor, and he was driving a forklift in aisle 9, and he had not said one word about it. She found Gus in the break room that evening, the supervisor who had taken his cap off, and he set down his coffee and looked at her a long time before he spoke, the way an old hand looks at a young boss when he is deciding how much truth she has earned. "You know who he is," Vera said. "I know who he was," Gus said. "I ran the floor of the old shop before your people bought us, back when it was 40 people and a landlord we were always 3 weeks behind on. Adam built the units on a bench in the back with his wife. She wrote the brains. He built the bodies. Rose, her name was. Sharpest 2 people I ever worked for, and the kindest, which you don't usually get together." He turned the coffee cup in his hands. "Then she got sick. He took leave to be with her, and after she died, he couldn't walk into a room full of the things they made together. So he let the patents sit, told the lawyers to just keep the lights on, and he took a forklift job in one of his own buildings because it was 10 minutes from his girls' school, and nobody would ask him to invent anything." Gus looked up. "You stood on that rail and told a room full of strangers you'd automate him by next quarter. He could automate this whole building blind. He just doesn't want to anymore." He stood. "Leave that man be, Miss Lindholm. He's lost enough." "I can't," Vera said. "No," Gus said. "I don't suppose you can." That evening, Adam was fixing the chain on Sadie's bicycle in the yellow square of the porch light when the dark car pulled up and Vera got out. She did not come past the gate. "You're Adam Beckett," she said. "You invented the robots. Every one of them is yours." He tested the chain with his thumb. "I drive a forklift," he said. "Don't," she said. "Please. One of your units was 90 seconds from taking down my whole east field, and you heard it from across the floor. I run a company that's built top to bottom on patents with your name on them, and I didn't know you were inside the building. I need to understand what I'm sitting on top of, and you're the only one who can tell me." Sadie came to the screen door in her pajamas. "Dad, who is it?" "Someone from work," Adam said. "Go on up, I'll be there in a minute." The girl looked at Vera with frank assessment, the way children do, and went. Adam wiped his hands on a rag and looked at the woman at his gate. "I left that life for a reason," he said. "I'm not going back into it." "I'm not asking you to," she said. "I'm asking you to tell me the truth one time, then you never have to see me again." He thought about it longer than she expected. Then he opened the gate. Inside, at the table, with Sadie asleep upstairs, he told her the shape of it without the wound at the center. He and Rose had built the units together in a back room, her code and his machines, 2 people and a bench, and a landlord they were always behind on. They had filed the patents in his name because the lawyer said one name was cleaner, and Rose had laughed and said, "Fine, but the robots are mine, and you can have the staplers." Then she had gotten sick, and he had spent the last year of her life beside her instead of at the bench, and after she was gone, he could not walk into a building full of the machines that were the last thing the 2 of them had made together. So he had let the patents sit and told the lawyers to keep the lights on, and he had taken a forklift job, 10 minutes from his daughter's school, where no one would ask him to build another thing. "Why are you really here?" he said. "It isn't the robot. It isn't the patent." She did not answer right away, which was its own answer. "We filed to go public in 6 weeks, she said finally. "The whole thing rests on owning the technology clean. And every time my counsel walks me through the IP chain, there's a piece that doesn't sit right, and the man who built that chain for me is my own chief technology officer." Adam was quiet for a moment. "Then start there," he said. "A patent doesn't walk off on its own. Somebody carried it." Preston Vale was 48 and had been the chief technology officer of Lindholm Logistics for 7 years, and he had expected, when the company filed to go public, that the world would finally see the automated network as his, because he had run it for years while the inventor pushed pallets in aisle 9, and a man who runs a thing long enough begins to believe he made it. The public offering would make him very rich, but only if the technology belonged cleanly to the company, and it did not while a living inventor held an unassigned license. So Preston Vale had solved the problem the way he solved most problems. He had drafted an assignment that moved the foundational patents to the company outright, backdated it, and signed it with the inventor's name, a signature traced from a 9-year-old filing, and he had buried it 3 layers deep in the IP chain and assumed no one would ever match it to a living hand. He had also begun, quietly, to plan the thing he had wanted for years, the elimination of the last human roles in the network, the forklift aisle first, because it offended him that there was a man in the building who had been there at the beginning and could see what he had done. Vera asked Gus whether anything survived from the old shop, the real records, the founding papers. Gus looked at her a long time, then went out to his truck and came back with a battered file box he had kept in his own garage for 9 years. "When your people bought us, they cleared the back room into a dumpster," Gus said. "I took this home. Felt wrong to pitch it." Inside was the original patent filing, the inventor's true signature on the declaration, the first prototype logs, and a printout of the earliest code, with a header line still on it, "R. Beckett, build one. Let's see if it walks." Clipped behind it, something Gus had added himself, a printout of an email from 3 weeks ago, forwarded to him by a clerk in IP who did not like what she was being asked to file, from Preston Vale's account to outside counsel. One line: "Scrub the inventor from the IP chain before the roadshow. I'll handle the assignment." Vera held the page and felt the floor of her own company tilt under her. She went back to the South Side house on a Thursday, and this time Sadie opened the door first and looked up and said, "You're the lady who said you'd automate my dad, because children repeat the parts adults wish they wouldn't." Adam came out of the kitchen with a dish towel over his shoulder, and Vera held up the box, and he understood at once. He read it slowly, the load-bearing part first, the way he read anything that mattered. When he came to the line in Rose's hand, "Build one, let's see if it walks," he set his hand flat on the page and held it there, and his knuckles went white, and then the breath went out of him, and his hand opened again, deliberate, the way of a man who had decided a long time ago not to make a fist in front of his daughter. When he reached the forged assignment, he looked at the signature that was meant to be his for a long moment. "That isn't my hand," he said quietly. "It's close. He got the B wrong. I close it from the bottom, I always have. He's run my machines for 7 years, and he never once watched how the man who built them signs his own name." He almost smiled. It did not reach anywhere. He thinks running a thing is the same as making it. It isn't. He never understood the difference, and that's the whole of why this is going to come apart on him. Sadie had come back in her socks and crossed straight to Vera and held up a fresh drawing, the way she did with people she had decided about. 3 figures now, a man, a girl, and a woman with dark hair, holding hands under a yellow sun. Vera took it in both hands like it was something that might break. She had not been given anything for free in a very long time. Adam watched his daughter, and then he watched the woman holding the drawing, and the hardness he carried loosened by 1 notch. "I came to give you the truth," Vera said. "You deserve to see who signed your name." "You came because you don't have anyone to tell when you're tired," Adam said. He was not unkind about it. She did not answer, which was its own answer. "The roadshow starts Friday," she said. "Investor Day, the whole floor, the press, the bankers. Preston's presenting the technology as the company's crown jewel. If it goes the way he's built it, the offering closes on a stolen patent, and the people in this building lose their jobs by spring." Adam stood and folded the dish towel and set it on the counter. "Then we go Friday," he said, and she noticed that he had said "we," and she did not remark on it, because she had already learned that with him, the important words came in small, and you did not chase them. Preston Vale learned that Vera had been talking to the old supervisor from a clerk who owed him a favor, and he moved the way frightened, careful men move, smoothly. On Thursday, a man Adam did not know was parked across from Sadie's school at pickup with a phone held low. Gus called that evening to say a stranger had been on the floor, asking which forklift driver had pulled the unit offline. Adam took Sadie to Rose's mother across town and stood in the doorway and told the old woman to lock everything and open the door for no one until he came back. Sadie held his sleeve. "Are you in trouble?" she asked. "No, baby," he said. "Somebody else is. I'm just the one who's going to say so." That night, for the first time in 3 years, he took the gray tote down from the closet shelf. He needed the founding papers, a true sample of his hand for the examiner. He lifted out the framed patent and Rose's scuffed laptop and the photograph of her at the whiteboard laughing, and he sat with the picture a while, and he did not cry. He had done that, but something clenched in him for 3 years let go by 1 degree. He opened the laptop, and it still held her first build notes, and at the bottom of one of them she had written, in a comment line no compiler would ever read, "If you're reading this and I'm not around, the machines were always the easy part. Take care of the girl." He read it twice. Then he closed the laptop and understood that a man had tried to steal the last thing he and Rose ever made together, and to throw the people who tended it out into the cold, and that he was the only one alive who could stop it. He left the tote down off the shelf this time, where he could reach it, and found he did not mind it being there. Investor Day filled the floor of the flagship center on Friday morning, a stage built at the head of the main field, 300 bankers and analysts and reporters in rows, the robots running a choreographed demonstration behind glass. Preston Vale stood at the lectern in a tailored gray suit and walked them through the technology, our navigation, our coordination logic, our arm. And he smiled the smile of a man who had already counted the votes. Vera was meant to open the floor for him. She stepped to the microphone instead. "Before Preston continues," she said, "I'd like to introduce the man who actually invented what you're watching." And the room turned, and Adam walked out onto the floor. He had traded the high-vis vest for the one dark suit he owned, 10 years out of fashion, pressed that morning. He carried a battered file box. He did not look at the bankers. He found Gus standing at the edge of the crowd and gave him the smallest nod, and the old man's jaw worked once, and then Adam set the box on the lectern. "My name is Adam Beckett," he said. "I invented the units on this floor. My wife wrote the software and I built the machines on a bench in a back room before this company existed. The patents are in my name, and they have never been assigned to anyone." He let it sit. "The offering you're all here for rests on an assignment that moves those patents to the company. I never signed it. Whoever traced my name got the letter wrong, the way a man does when he's copying a thing instead of meaning it." The screen behind him changed. Vera put up the original filing beside the forged assignment, the true signature beside the traced one, the difference ringed in red by an examiner 2 days fast. Then the first prototype log, Rose's header line still on it, build one, let's see if it walks. Then the email, one line, scrub the inventor from the IP chain before the roadshow, I'll handle the assignment. My wife used to say the machines were the easy part, Adam said, and his voice did not rise. The hard part is the people who run them, and the man who built this company's whole story on our work is about to throw them out of the building to make the numbers cleaner. He's standing on this stage. I'm not here to accuse anyone. I'm here so the record says who made this and who keeps it running. He looked once toward the edge of the crowd, at the floor workers who had been quietly told to stand in back, the pickers and the packers and the techs. These people are the reason any of it ships, he said. Not the patent, them. I'd like that on the record too. The silence had weight. Preston Vale stood and his face had gone the color of the paper the lies were printed on. You walked away 3 years ago, he said. You don't get to walk back in and pretend you still belong here. Adam looked at him and did not raise his voice. I don't need to belong here, he said. I just need you to know I still remember everything we built, including how I signed my name. Vera took the microphone. Preston Vale is removed as Chief Technology Officer effective now. The offering is on hold. The forged assignment and the diverted royalties are going to the Bureau and the Securities Regulator tonight. In the lobby, 2 investigators were already waiting, and Preston Vale walked to them without resistance, which was worse than if he had run. In the weeks after, the story moved through the business press and then the wires. Vale was charged with forgery, fraud, and securities violations, and the diverted royalty stream unwound itself in a single afternoon under a subpoena. 2 board members who had pushed the timeline resigned. Vera declined every interview and gave one written statement, 11 sentences long, and signed her name to it. She killed the plan to automate the last human roles, and she went to the floor workers Vale had marked for the door, one shift at a time, and stood in the break room and told them their jobs were safe and meant it, and listened to the ones who needed to say what the threat had cost them and did not interrupt. Then, quietly, she built a fund to retrain warehouse workers whose roles were changing into the ones who maintained the machines, so that automation lifted people instead of discarding them, and named it the Rose Beckett Fund, after a software engineer she had never met, before she had told Adam she was going to. Adam did not take a title at Lindholm, but he let Gus put him on the books quietly, as the floor's on-call diagnostic, the person they paged when a unit did something the sensors could not explain, and on those days, he came in and walked the field with his head tilted, listening, and found the wrong note in the music. And then he went home. He kept the forklift too for a while, because he liked Aisle 9 and the freight that needed a human, and because the work asked nothing of him but care. And care was the one thing he had never run out of. On a gray morning in March, Vera drove him to the cemetery at the edge of town where Rose was buried, and she stayed 3 steps back while he crouched and set something small on the grass before the stone, a tiny machined gear no bigger than a coin that he had turned at the floor's repair bench that week for no reason he could have named. She heard him say, low, not quite to anyone, they tried to take the machines and throw the people out with them, and I didn't let them. And then, softer, you were right, it was never the machines. He did not say more. Vera did not come closer. She understood that her place at that moment was not nearer, and that there are conversations a man has with a stone that a living person is only allowed to stand near and not inside. On the drive back, neither of them spoke, and the silence was not heavy, only full. Vera started coming by on the weekends, first with a reason and then without one. She traded her heels for boots that got scuffed and learned the names of Sadie's library books and let the girl beat her at a card game whose rules changed whenever Sadie was losing. One evening, she watched Adam teach Sadie to solder a loose wire on a little toy rover they were building together at the kitchen table, his big hands over the girl's small ones, slow, no wasted motion, the same care she had seen him turn on a 400-unit field, as if to him there were no difference between a toy and an empire, only things that needed doing right. Let the iron do the work, he told her. If you press, you'll burn it. Sadie did not press and looked up at him with the pride of a child trusted with a real thing. And Vera, watching from the doorway with a cup of tea going cold in her hand, understood that this was the whole of him, that the inventor and the forklift driver and the father were one quiet person all the way down. On a clear Saturday in spring, the three of them finished the little rover and set it loose on the kitchen floor, Adam on his knees coaxing it through a turn, Sadie shrieking with delight, Vera kneeling in an old shirt of his that did not quite fit, laughing in a way she did not remember doing before. Sadie looked up and asked, "Are you going to stay forever?" The way children ask the questions adults are too careful to, and Vera glanced at Adam, who had stopped and was looking at her, and she said, "I'm thinking about it." Adam set the rover down and asked Sadie to go get the spare batteries from the drawer, and the girl ran off, and he turned to Vera. The kitchen smelled of solder and coffee and warm bread from the place downstairs. "You don't have to promise a child something you haven't promised yourself," he said. "I'm promising both of them," she said. "At the same time." He looked at her for a long moment. Then he raised his hand and tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear with the back of one knuckle, the first time he had touched her in all the weeks she had been coming. She did not pull back. He did not move closer. It was a moment, no more, but it was long enough for both of them to know it had finally arrived. Sadie came back with the batteries and slipped one hand into her father's and one into Vera's, and turned the three of them gently to face the little rover trundling across the floor, the way she did, as if this had always been the arrangement and she had only been waiting for the grown-ups to catch up. By summer, the rover had been joined by three more, and Sadie had her own corner of the kitchen table for building, and the scuffed laptop, Rose's laptop, sat open beside her where Adam could see it while she worked. Vera kept a smaller office now and let most of the old life go, the galas, the rankings, the rooms where a person was a line on a balance sheet, and she found, by the third month, that she did not miss any of it. She had started keeping, on the corner of her own desk where the analysts could not see it, the little machined gear Adam had turned, and she picked it up sometimes in the middle of a hard meeting and turned it over in her fingers and felt the meeting get smaller. She had spent 15 years learning to read a balance sheet at a glance, and she was only now learning to read the thing she had walked past on aisle 9 for 2 years, a man who had made the most valuable thing in her company and had wanted, more than anything, to be left alone to drive a forklift near it. A man had been laughed at from a high rail for driving a forklift in a building that ran every hour of every day on machines he had made with his own 2 hands. Some people build their worth where the whole room can watch it move, 400 machines breathing under the lights. Others build it once, quietly, with the person they loved, and then go drive a forklift in the corner of it. And you only learn what those hands made when one wrong note in the music makes them stand up.